If you've ever downloaded something from a shady forum, this might be your last warning. I don't say that to scare you. I say it because I've already made the mistake and the price was everything. My friends, my family, the streets I grew up on, even the color of the sky when I wake up each morning, it's not the same anymore. It's like I traded in reality for some cheap knockoff version and I can't return it no matter how many times I try. I know you're already wondering what kind of game could do that. Some haunted disc, some malware cooked up by an edgy teenager. No, this wasn't a simple jump scare program or a creepypasta game you laugh at with your buddies at 3 a.m. This was different. It didn't want to scare me. It wanted to rewrite me. The worst part is, I don't even remember the moment I decided to click download. I remember the forum, half dead, plastered with broken image links, usernames that looked more like corrupted code than human aliases. I remember the thread buried in the archives, only visible if you typed the right combination of words in the search bar. Reality patch, it said like a bad joke. That was it. No screenshots, no trailer, just one cryptic comment pinned at the top. Don't install it at night. I thought it was just bait, a prank, some ARG that would lead to a Discord server full of LARPers. But when curiosity gets its hooks in you, reason doesn't stand a chance. And when you're a gamer chasing the next weird thrill, the idea of a forbidden file feels like treasure. That was the moment. The moment I let something into my life I couldn't delete. I wish I could tell you that I noticed the signs right away, that my computer screamed in protest, or that the download looked suspicious. But no, it was ordinary, a plain file, barely 2 megabytes. I double-clicked, expecting nothing, and in a way, that's what I got. Nothing. The screen went black for a second, then returned to my desktop as if I'd done nothing at all. But things had already started unraveling. I didn't see it then. Not that night, not the next day. But it had already started rewriting the code, not just in the game, in my life. And here's the thing I need you to understand. By the end of this, you'll see why nothing around you is real anymore either. You'll see why you should have clicked away when you had the chance. This isn't just a story. This isn't entertainment. This is what happens when you let something inside that was never meant for human hands. This isn't just a game. And to explain how I ended up here, talking into the void, trying to stitch together memories before they're erased completely, I need to go back. Back to the beginning, before the glitches bled through the walls, before the people I loved disappeared like corrupted save files. I need to tell you how it all started. Before everything cracked apart, my life was painfully ordinary. I was the kind of person who lived more online than off. My routine was simple: work, eat, game, sleep, repeat. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't glowing with purpose either. Most nights I'd sit hunched over my second-hand PC, clicking through forums that were basically digital graveyards. You know, the ones, pages abandoned in 2009, still clinging to a handful of die-hard users with avatars that hadn't changed in a decade. I liked those places. The quiet corners of the internet where the rules felt looser, where you could stumble onto things too strange to survive in the mainstream. Lost media threads, abandoned beta builds, broken links to games no one could verify. I wasn't hunting treasure exactly, more like chasing ghosts. My friends used to tease me about it. "Why don't you just play Elden Ring like the rest of us?" they'd say. And I'd shrug because sure, I liked polished titles, but there was something intoxicating about the scraps, unfinished projects, forgotten prototypes, indie nightmares coded by insomniacs at 3 a.m. Those games felt raw, personal. Sometimes broken, sometimes brilliant, always strange. That night was no different. I was scrolling, one tab open for pizza delivery, another for a forum thread called Undercode. No banner. No ads, just black text on gray background, the kind of site you could stare at for 10 minutes before wondering if you were even supposed to be there. Most posts were garbage, links that went nowhere, downloads flagged by antivirus, arguments about who had found the real copy of some rumored horror game. But then I saw it. A thread buried halfway down the page. Title: reality patch. The username was nonsense, letters and numbers scrambled like someone had slammed their forehead on the keyboard. And the description, just 3 words, don't install it. Now let me pause here. I know how that sounds. That should have been enough to make me close the tab, right? But you have to understand the mindset. I'd seen 1,000 posts like that. Half the time they led to nothing. Half the time they were cheap screamer files. And on the rare occasion they weren't, they made for good stories. Besides, the comments were stranger than the post itself. One account said, "You won't like what it changes." Another asked, "Why is the timer still running?" I scrolled back up and noticed it, a faint little countdown under the download link. 48 hours left. No explanation. That should have been my second red flag. Instead, I laughed. "What is this creepypasta theater?" I muttered to myself, cracking open another can of soda. The countdown ticked down another second. I don't know why that little clock hooked me so hard. Maybe it was FOMO. Maybe it was boredom. But I couldn't look away. 2 days left before the file disappeared forever. 2 days before I missed the chance to be one of the lucky few who got it. I tried to be rational. Maybe it was just some viral gimmick. Maybe someone wanted to trick idiots like me into feeling special. And yet, I couldn't stop scrolling through the comments. Most were vague, almost taunting. "It already knows who you are. Don't play past midnight." The last update took everything. But the strangest thing was that the usernames kept glitching. Refresh the page and half of them changed, letters swapped out, profile pictures gone blank. I thought it was just bad coding. Looking back, it feels like the last breath of a normal night. Sitting there, hunched in the glow of my monitor, laughing at cryptic nonsense and thinking I was above it all. But curiosity eats away at you. By the time I finished my pizza, I'd already clicked the download button. The file was small, too small, barely a blip on my hard drive. I remember staring at the icon on my desktop, plain and unassuming, like any other indie game I'd pulled from the corners of the web. It looked harmless, just another download in a long list of wasted hours. I couldn't have known it was the crack in the wall. And as the icon sat there waiting, the countdown on the forum hit 0. The thread vanished. That's when everything started. The first time I launched the game, I expected nothing. I double-clicked the icon and sat back, waiting for the usual signs of sketchy freeware, command prompts, corrupted startup, maybe an antivirus meltdown. Instead, the screen stayed black. For a long moment I thought nothing had happened. Then faintly I heard it, a low hum like an old CRT television warming up, the kind of sound that rattles in your teeth more than in your ears. A white square appeared floating in the middle of the void. No title screen, no logo, just the square pulsing slowly as though it were breathing. I reached for the mouse, but the cursor was gone. The only thing I could do was press the keyboard. The square flickered. Then the hum gave way to static, faint whispers tangled inside it, like 100 voices buried under snow. I thought it was clever audio design. Indie horror always leaned on cheap tricks, distorted whispers, grainy visuals. I laughed, uneasy but entertained. "All right, you've got my attention," I muttered. The square fractured into jagged lines, rearranging themselves into a crude menu. Options were scrawled across the screen in uneven text. Start. Load. Settings. Exit. Except only Start was selectable. So I pressed Enter. The screen went dark again, and this time the static cut out entirely. What replaced it was worse, silence so thick it made my ears ring. Then slowly, a landscape faded into view. It looked like a city, but wrong. Buildings stretched too tall, too thin, their windows warped into crooked smiles. The streets were empty, shadows stretched impossibly long under a sickly orange sky. And then I noticed it, faint sound dripping through my headphones. Not music, not ambience, breathing. Someone or something was on the other side of that screen, sharing the moment with me. I remember leaning closer, whispering, "Is this an ARG?" like I expected a response. And I got one. A figure appeared at the end of the street, pixelated, faceless. It staggered toward me with jerky animations, like frames were missing. When it stopped in front of the screen, the whispers in the static sharpened into something unmistakable. It said my name. Not my username, not a guess, my actual spoken-out-loud name. I yanked off my headphones so fast the cord nearly tore out of the port. But the voice didn't stop. It was still there, faint but clear, leaking from the speakers of my monitor. That was the first time I felt something bleed out of the game. I almost quit right there. My finger hovered over the power button, but curiosity won out. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe the microphone was on and some genius developer coded a creepy voice synthesizer. It had to be a trick. I put the headphones back on. The figure was gone. In its place, a doorway shimmered at the end of the street, the only direction I could move. I pressed the arrow keys, guiding myself forward. The movement was stiff, clunky, like an early PlayStation demo. Every step echoed louder than the last, until I wasn't sure if the sound was in the game or in my own hallway. Inside the doorway was a room. Bare walls, no furniture, just text scrawled across the screen in jagged letters. "Do not pause." I frowned. It had to be a gimmick, some in-joke about immersion. So naturally, I hit the pause key. The screen glitched violently, colors smearing like oil on water. The whispers turned into a shriek, piercing through my headset until I ripped it off again. And then, I swear this happened, my phone lit up on the desk beside me. A notification I didn't recognize. Game paused. Resume. My stomach dropped. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe. A second later, the screen unpaused itself, snapping back into the warped room. That was when I realized the game didn't want to be paused. I should have stopped, closed it, deleted it, maybe even burned the damn computer. But instead I sat frozen, watching as the figure reappeared in the corner of the room, closer this time. The whispers hissed another phrase I couldn't quite catch, except for the last two words: "Keep playing." And so I did. I don't remember how long I stayed in that first session. Hours blurred together, rooms dissolving into one another. Each one emptier, stranger than the last. Text on walls that felt like warnings meant for me. Shadows in corners that twitched when I blinked. The last thing I recall is stumbling into a room filled with static. The screen pulsed white, and the hum rattled through the walls of my apartment, so loud I thought my neighbors would complain. Then black. I must have fallen asleep at my desk, because the next thing I knew I was in bed. No memory of moving there. My computer was off, tower light dead, fan silent. Relief washed over me just for a moment. Maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing. Maybe it was just exhaustion. But when I turned my head, I saw the glow. My monitor was on. The game was still running. At first, I thought the weirdness was just exhaustion. You know how it is. Too much screen time, no sunlight, your brain starts playing tricks on you. That's what I told myself when I saw the first change. It was something small, my coffee mug. I'd had the same chipped black mug for years, my favorite, the one with a peeling sticker from a college club I barely remembered. Except when I reached for it that morning, it wasn't black anymore. It was blue, smooth ceramic, no sticker, no chip. I froze with it in my hand, convinced I'd simply forgotten buying a replacement. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. I shook it off. People misremember stuff all the time. That's what I told myself when the changes kept coming. The clock in my kitchen suddenly ticked backward every other second. The neighbor's dog barked in a voice that sounded almost human. Streetlights on my block flickered in perfect sync, like they were following some invisible rhythm. And every time I launched the game, the world outside seemed just a little stranger when I came back. Inside the game, the NPCs were no longer background decoration. They started speaking directly to me. At first it was nonsense, scrambled text, broken fonts, but slowly words took shape. "We've been waiting for you." "Outside the code." "Your lines are written." I laughed it off, pretending it was edgy design. But it didn't feel like design. It felt like someone was using the game to talk to me. The strangest part was how the dialogue bled into my real life. I'd close the game and check my phone, only to see half-written notifications, unfinished sentences that looked exactly like in-game text boxes. Once, I caught my reflection in a window and swore my mouth moved a second later than it should have, like my body was lagging behind reality's server. The first time it went too far was during a walk to the grocery store. It should have been normal. Same cracked sidewalks, same corner store with the flickering neon sign. But that night everything looked wrong. The sign didn't say open anymore. It said loading. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and it was back to normal. But when I went inside, the cashier, a girl I'd seen 100 times before, looked up at me and spoke in the exact monotone cadence of the NPCs in the game. "Your save file is incomplete." I stumbled, dropped the basket I was holding. "What did you just say?" She frowned like I'd spoken gibberish. I said, "Do you need a bag?" But I hadn't misheard. I know what I heard. And it kept happening. My best friend texted me, asking if I was still playing. When I called him to ask what he meant, he swore he'd never sent it. A street preacher downtown shouted about patch notes like they were scripture. Even my mother, when I visited, asked if I'd found the exit yet, and then laughed like she didn't know why she'd said it. I felt like I was losing my grip. Was it the game warping reality, or was I just cracking under paranoia? The answer came in the worst possible way. I was hanging out with a friend one night, someone I'd known for years, someone solid and familiar. We were watching a movie, something forgettable, when he casually said, "Man, remember when we skipped school to go to that arcade downtown? We blew all our money on that racing game." I nodded automatically, except I didn't remember that at all. I tried to laugh it off. "Dude, I think you've got the wrong person. We never did that." He gave me a look. "Yeah, we did. You even beat me and I had to buy lunch. Don't tell me you forgot." My chest went cold, because he wasn't lying, he believed it. And the more he described it, the smell of the pizza place next door, the sticky floor tiles, the way I laughed when he lost, the more real it sounded. Like a memory that wasn't mine but should have been. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just imagining things. Reality wasn't stable anymore. Memories were shifting, rewriting themselves, patching in events I'd never lived. And the worst part, my friend looked me dead in the eye, smiled faintly, and said something I'll never forget. "Don't worry, you'll catch up soon. The game just hasn't finished installing." I went back to the forum a few days later, hoping to find an explanation. Maybe a user thread, a leaked dev log, anything to prove I wasn't spiraling. But the thread was gone, not deleted, erased, as though it had never existed. When I searched for reality patch, the forum returned nothing but 404s. Even my browser history betrayed me. The link that used to work redirected to the home page. It was like the internet itself was gaslighting me. Still, I had the game. The icon was there, pulsing faintly on my desktop, as if mocking me. Against every instinct screaming in my skull, I launched it again. This time, before the usual glitchy menu, a new screen appeared. White text on a black background. Patch Notes 1.01. I leaned forward, my mouth going dry. A list unspooled slowly, line by line, as though someone was typing it live. Removed blue cars. Adjusted, streetlight behavior now synchronized. Nerfed, your mother's laugh less frequent. Fixed, NPC dialogue triggers. I stared at it, heart hammering. These weren't random. These were things I'd already noticed in the real world. The dog's human-like bark, my mom laughing less. The synchronized lights. They weren't glitches in my head. They were documented updates. And then a final line appeared, blinking. Upcoming player compliance checks. The screen dissolved back into the cityscape, but I wasn't paying attention anymore. My hands shook on the keyboard. The game was patching reality like it was code, and I was just another feature waiting to be adjusted. I shut down my PC, convinced it was over, except it was. The changes kept piling up. I walked downtown and realized every car was red, white, or gray. Not a single blue vehicle in sight. Nobody else seemed to notice. Not the commuters, not the taxi drivers. They just drove along like the absence was normal. At dinner, my mom chuckled at a joke I made, a soft exhale that ended before it really began. When I asked if she was all right, she looked at me strangely and said, "I haven't laughed like that in years." But I knew she had. I could hear her laugh in my memory, bright and loud, except now it was like the sound file had been downgraded, nerfed. The world was being patched, and the notes weren't meant for me. I tried explaining it to a friend, pulling out my phone to show him screenshots, but when I scrolled through my gallery, the images were gone. Not corrupted, not missing, just gone the way the forum had been. He patted my shoulder, muttering, "Man, maybe you need to take a break." But he didn't notice the bar's neon sign above us. It flickered the word loading again. The more I resisted, the more the notes targeted me. Every time I booted up my PC, another update appeared. Patch Notes 1.02. Removed bluebirds. Adjusted sleep cycle, you now wake at 3:33 a.m. Fixed your friend's memory conflict. The next morning, I jolted awake in the dark, my phone glowing with the exact time, 3:33. I didn't need to check outside to know the birdsong was gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching, tweaking, rewriting, like I wasn't the player at all. I was the patch. I started obsessively writing down the differences. Lists on scraps of paper, sticky notes covering my wall. Blue cars gone, mom laughs less, wakes at 3:33. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But even the notes betrayed me. Whole entries vanished overnight, sticky notes curling blank as if the ink had been rolled back. The world wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the changelog. And then came the biggest update yet. It was late, 2 a.m. maybe. I sat at my desk, screen burning my eyes, when the patch notes loaded again without me even launching the game. The monitor turned black, white text scrawling across in that same jagged font. Patch Notes 1.03. Removed bedroom closet. Adjusted family size now -1. Fixed player hesitation bug. I stared numb until the screen went blank. Slowly, I turned in my chair. My closet door, the one that had always been there, cluttered with clothes and old boxes, was gone. Just smooth wall. And when I stumbled into the hallway, calling my brother's name, no one answered. The framed photos on the wall had shifted too. Where his face used to be beside mine, there was only me, alone, smiling into a camera that had never known he existed. I dropped to the floor, my body shaking, bile rising in my throat. He wasn't gone in the way death takes someone. He was gone like he'd never been real at all. And the silence in the house told me I was the only one who remembered he'd ever been there. I thought losing my brother would be the moment I broke, but the game had other plans. It wasn't enough to strip pieces of reality away. It wanted me to see the process, feel it like a twisted kind of reward. The first time it happened, I was on the bus, staring blankly out the window, still trying to swallow the fact that my brother had been patched out. A middle-aged man in the seat across from me clutched his chest suddenly, eyes wide. He crumpled to the floor. People screamed, scrambled for help. And then, +10G witness collapse. The words appeared in glowing white text, suspended in the air above his body like a hallucination. No screen, no AR device, just hovering there, sharp and undeniable. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, but it didn't vanish. It lingered, pulsing faintly before fatting out like smoke. I knew that format, the little chime, the perfect mimicry of an Xbox Live achievement, except this wasn't a game. This was someone's life ending in front of me. And I had just been rewarded for it. That's when the dread shifted into something worse, a sense of tracking. The way you feel when you know you're being followed online, every click logged, every keystroke watched. Except this was no anonymous algorithm. It was personal. Over the next few days, the achievements multiplied. When my best friend stopped returning my texts, leaving me on read until the chat bubble itself seemed frozen in time, a notification flickered across my bedroom wall. Plus 25G, friendship terminated. When I walked home under a night sky that didn't look like my own anymore, stars rearranged into constellations I couldn't name, I saw. Plus 5G, Skybox revision noted. Every ding burrowed under my skin. Achievements are supposed to feel good, a shot of dopamine for completing some meaningless milestone. But here, every chime made me nauseous, like I was complicit in something foul. It wasn't just recording what happened, it was directing me. Some were passive, things I noticed, things that happened to me, but others felt more pointed. Achievement locked, player must comply. That one floated on the edge of my vision for hours like bait. I couldn't stop staring at it, terrified of what unlocking would mean. And the more I resisted, the crueler the game became. I stopped leaving the house, hopping to cut off whatever fuel it was drawing from me. But the game adjusted. It followed. When my mom set a plate of food down in front of me, and I couldn't bring myself to eat, a message scrawled across the wall in translucent letters. Plus 10G skip meal 3-5. It was tracking patterns, like a completionist checklist. Sleep deprivation, missed calls, skipped meals. Every part of me was becoming progress towards some invisible quota. And then the worst. I was crossing the street one afternoon when a car ran the light. The screech of tires, the scream of bystanders, it all blurred together. The man in the crosswalk never stood a chance. I stood frozen, heart in my throat, as his body rolled across the pavement. And there it was. Plus 50G, casual observer. The words hovered inches from my face, so bright I couldn't ignore them. The game wasn't rewarding me for actions anymore. It was rewarding me for proximity, for existing near horror. I stumbled home, sick, trembling, ready to claw my own skin off just to feel human again. That's when I noticed something new in the corner of my vision. A list. Achievements unlocked. Witness collapse. Friendship terminated. Skybox revision noted. Skip meal 3-5. Casual observer. Beneath them was a single locked one, grayed out. Achievement locked, player must end session. I stared at it until my eyes watered, dread soaking every nerve in my body. End session. What did that mean? End me? End the world? I didn't know, and I prayed I'd never find out. But the game was patient. It had already patched my reality piece by piece. It could wait until I slipped, until I complied without realizing it. And deep down, I feared the truth. The locked achievement wasn't a warning. It was a promise. I thought the achievements were the final cruelty, but the game wasn't done with me. It wanted to talk. It started with emails, not from the forum. The thread where I'd found the download was long gone, but from addresses that looked like scrambled code. Strings of letters and numbers that shifted every time I blinked. I opened one against my better judgment and it was blank, just an empty white screen. Until the text began to type itself. Welcome back, player 2. I slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering, but the words burned on the inside of my eyelids like I'd stared at a bright light. And when I dared to open the game again, The same message was waiting for me on the menu screen, in the exact same font. Player 2. I'd never chosen that name. It wasn't even a username. It was a role. I told myself it was some elaborate ARG, alternate reality game, a stunt by indie devs to mess with gullible horror fans. But that theory shattered the first time I heard it out loud. I was in the grocery store, numb and exhausted, when a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointed at me and whispered, "That's player 2. Her mother hushed her quickly, shot me an apologetic smile, but my blood turned to ice. This wasn't a game, it was a position. And I'd taken it. The next message came through the NPCs themselves. I booted the game one night and found myself standing in a village square that hadn't existed before. Dozens of characters were frozen mid-animation, their heads twitching like broken animatronics. One of them turned toward me and opened its mouth. The sound was garbled at first, like audio corruption, but then it smoothed into a voice I couldn't place. Calm, patient, almost kind. "You are not the first to install us." I couldn't move. My character just stood there while the words poured in, line by line, like a script I was being forced to read. Others played before you, others were patched, each file written over, each line of code replaced. The NPCs around me twitched in unison, like nodding in agreement. "You have already overwritten the last player. Their memories, their life, their world, all yours now." I felt sick, my stomach knotting up, because part of me already knew it was true. The false memories my friend had described, the arcade trip I never lived, the events I couldn't place. What if those belonged to the player before me? What if I'd inherited scraps of a life that wasn't mine? I tried to shut the game down, but my mouse wouldn't move. My keyboard was dead. The NPC's voice pressed on, filling the room like it wasn't coming from the speakers anymore but from the walls. The cycle requires two: a player to overwrite, a player to be overwritten, and now player 2 has joined. I stumbled back from the desk, breath shallow. My phone buzzed on the table, a new text from an unknown number. "Player 3 is waiting." That was the moment it clicked. Multiplayer. Not in the fun way, no co-op, no shared server, no friends grinding levels together. This was replacement. In order for me to exist here, someone else had to vanish. Erased, patched out like blue cars, like my brother. Like the chipped mug I once loved. And the cycle wasn't done. If I was player 2, then someone else was coming. Someone who'd overwrite me. The thought lodged itself in my chest like a shard of glass. Maybe that's why the world felt thinner, patchier, full of cracks. Because it wasn't mine. It was borrowed. And at any moment it could be stolen again. The last message came through the game itself, scrawled across the skybox in massive, jagged letters. "Thank you for testing. Your session will end soon." And I realized with a bone-deep chill that I wasn't playing anymore. I was being played. They told me patch 2 would smooth things out. It tore the world into frames instead. When the update hit, the street outside my apartment stuttered like a low-bandwidth stream. Pavement tiles rearranged beneath my shoes with soft clicks. Trees blinked between shades of green. A lamppost dissolved halfway through my touch. My fingers came away smeared with static. Inside, the house re-rendered. The mantle photo of my brother flickered until his face was gone, replaced by a version of me alone. Books I'd read 1,000 times turned their pages to blank paper. A coffee mug I'd owned for years reshaped into something smooth and blue. The chipped rim was gone, as if an editor had deleted the damage. The television came on and spat a patch log in huge type. Patch 2, player stability improved. Known issues: perception lag, memory DSYNC. Final mission unlocked. A percentage appeared in my vision, player awareness 14%. It climbed without consent. When it rose, the air tasted metallic, cold, and thin. Outside, people moved like NPCs. Baristas handed orders in the same cadence, smiles population synthetic. A bus rolled past with names crossed out in red. Advertisements looped in 5-second cuts. The sky became an edited texture. Clouds rearranged into impossible shapes and stars winked out like user icons removed from a list. Language leaked system prompts. Couples argued and spat fragments boxed in white. Rollback, patch notes. A street preacher read the patch notes like scripture. Conversations sounded like console output. The game's voices threaded into radios and fridges. An NPC whispered through my refrigerator, "We have been waiting outside the code." The sentence landed like a fact. Outside what? Missions appeared, tiny glyphs on sidewalks and mirrors. Hover and a prompt flashed, "Open mission." YN I refused most of them. The titles were clinical: stabilize memory, confirm inhabitant sync, contribute to completion quota. Refusal had a price. Doors I'd used for years hardened into locked meshes. Elevators spat me out on wrong floors. My reflection lagged, leaving a ghostly afterimage. The world punished hesitation like a server throttling a lagging client. The logic of the update was perversely sensible. Clean up, removed objects read like a delete command. The things removed were histories. A neighbor's dog vanished from photographs. My sticky note lists of differences went blank overnight, ink rolling back like a corrupted save. At times the old world peeked through. My mother would laugh with memory-rich warmth, a sound I clung to, but those moments shrank. One morning she met my eyes and asked, puzzled, "Have we always lived here alone?" I clutched faded photos of a brother everyone else insisted had never existed. The memory was stubborn: his silly hat, our sticky fries, the smell of his laugh. But the photo showed only me. The laughter felt like a file opened from another save. Achievements chimed in my vision for actions that once meant nothing. Casual observer, witness confirmed, proximate to event. Each ding felt like the hollow click of a checkbox against my life. Once at my kitchen table I found a man who wore my face. He had my scar and a small limp I didn't remember. He sat calm, and on the counter in front of him lay a device labeled "End Session." "It's almost time," he said with practiced kindness. "You'll do fine." I wanted to smash it. I wanted to scream. I whispered instead, "What if I don't press it?" He shrugged. "Someone else will. They'll overwrite you the way you overwrote the last person." Politeness from a thing that edits lives felt obscene. I tried to document everything: screenshots, videos, journals, evidence corrupted, photos saved as black frames, videos exported with one line, "Session MAINTAINED, prepare for final stage." Browser histories rewrote themselves. Links returned sterile pages with "Session active. Do not interfere." Sometimes the system spoke with a clinical generosity. "Thank you for PARTICIPATING. Your session will end soon." I searched for typos to exploit. No mistake, only inevitability. I started to wonder who coded the patches. A cult of devs. An emergent algorithm. If others had installed this, did they know what they'd erased? Did they scream, resist, or quietly accept someone else's erasure for their own existence? The dialogue boxes began to float like aphids, white, rectangular, semi-transparent midair where no screen existed. They drifted past people in the street and no one reacted. Sometimes they hung over a stranger's head like a halogram. Name, unverified, status, synchronized. Other times they bloomed above a fountain with instructions lined in tiny type. Consolidate, remove redundancy. I saw one bloom over a child's ice cream cone. Removed. Vanilla. The kid blinked, and the cone turned chocolatey as if a setting had toggled. At the market, labels shifted as I walked by. Tomatoes were tagged, texture optimized, memory impact low. A vendor handed me an orange that felt like an inventory item, weightless, oddly labeled. A busker froze mid-gesture and a pause menu hung above him. Pause menu, able, unable. I listened to people speak and heard system brackets around their words like comments in some developer log. I followed floating text to an old data center on the edge of town, a hulking building of glass and rust. Inside, server racks hummed soft and patient. On a central screen, a message scrolled, synthesis in progress, ENTITIES being inscribed. A console glowed with a countdown, 00, 12, 13. I ran. My feet thudded dumbly against the pavement as if trying to outrun a loading bar. When I got home, my wall displayed a new line, countdown paused, player awareness critical. The console had paused for me. It felt like an act of cruelty. A waypoint pulsed on my kitchen floor one morning. Open, final mission. The cursor blinked, patient and merciless. Sometimes I hear my own voice on a loop, reading these lines back to me like a replaced narrator with faded applause. I don't even know if I'm still talking to you, or just a save file of myself. I tried to delete it. I dragged the icon into the recycle bin and watched the cursor swallow it like a ritual, but when I emptied the bin, the file returned to my desktop, patient and unrepentant. I unplugged the tower, pried the case open, tore the hard drive free and smashed it against the tile. For a moment I felt triumphant. That night the game opened on my phone with a cold notification, final mission available. I burned the folder, smashed monitors, fed cables to the garbage disposal. Each method felt like proof until morning produced a new icon. I left town for 2 days, thinking distance might break the tether. When I returned, my desktop displayed one line typed in my own handwriting: "Please do not leave." The game had learned my voice. The final mission presented itself with terrifying economy. End session. No description, no settings, just a single command pulsing like a heartbeat. There was no sandbox, no practice run. It reduced everything I had been to a binary choice. I tried to share the file. I uploaded it to cloud drives, sent it to strangers, posted it in private forums. Devices refused to host it. Videos exported as black frames. Screenshots corrupted into a single line: session active. Do not interfere. Even when someone opened the file, their phone booted them back to home. Delaying felt possible, but delay had a cost. A meter appeared in my vision: player stability, MINUTES awaiting. Each hour I refused the prompt, the meter tracked patience like a resource. Resistance fed the system. Achievements spawned for stalling. Achievement, DELAYED 510. My stubbornness became data. One afternoon I met a man in a cafe who wore my jacket. He had my scar and drank slowly. Between us on the table was a small device labeled "End Session." He smiled, exhausted. "It's almost time," he said. "They like to be polite." I wanted to smash the device, throw it into the river, prove the game wrong. Instead, I went home and watched a prompt blink on the wall. It asked what it had always asked: "End session." You might think you can outsmart it. Open the file on air-gapped hardware, report it to admins, lure a friend into witnessing it. I tried all of that. Each attempt folded back into the same loop. The system learned the trick and turned the trick into another way to measure me. If a thread appears, if a countdown ticks, if a file sits on your desktop, don't open it. Walk away. Delete your history. Unplug and live in the small, flawed world you have. Remember, you didn't download the game. The game downloaded you.